At this point, you might be asking yourself, TJ, aren't you a little sick of Christmas movies? And yeah, I am. TJ, don't you work the next 2 days and then it's Christmas Eve? Yeah, I do. We can do this. We can do this, right? Today, I'm talking about the Rankin Bass stop motion films, specifically Rudolph, which I saw sometimes, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which I saw a lot, and The Year Without Santa Claus, which I genuinely think I've never seen before. I think Rudolph was the worst one, and Year Without Santa Claus was the best one. And maybe that was part of, production quality-wise, where Rudolph is a bunch of, obvious, sound stages, very white, very blank, North Pole barren. And The Year Without Santa Claus has, full town setups and, a plot, at least a little bit of a plot. There's a conflict, and the conflict gets resolved. Rudolph is basically just a bunch of 30-second clips tied together with Burt Ives saying, and then he ran away and fought the abominable snowman. They always say snow monster because he's a snowman. He's the abominable snowman. Rudolph is born with a nose that is a red light bulb, which always confused me. That never made sense to how somebody had that idea. So I looked up the origins of Rudolph, and it turns out that this department store that used to exist, Montgomery Ward, in an effort to save money on coloring books, self-published Rudolph the Rednose Reindeer one year. And Robert May, the author, just had the idea one foggy day to have a big flashlight on the reindeer's nose so Santa could see the way. Rudolph is born with this bright red nose, and Santa in this movie is evil because he shows up and he's like, oh, daughter, I'm so excited to see your kid who will one day be leading the reindeer team. Oh my God, he's a freak. You should be ashamed of yourself, Donner. Why did you do this? Santa's supposed to be like an arbiter of good, and he just shows up and just slams down on Rudolph. And later, the elves are performing a little song for him, and he's like, it was fine, I guess. He was in a bad mood. I think this should have been the Year Without a Santa Claus. They also throw in a ton of secondary characters that just never existed before, like the dentist elf, who's only there to one day pull all the teeth out of the abominable snowman, which is a horrible form of torture. And Yukon Cornelius with his dog sled, and he's there to mine for gold and then silver and then peppermint. This movie's climax is more about beating the abominable snow monster than it is about Rudolph using his light to see through the fog, which is an interesting choice. They took a lot of artistic liberties with this one, taking a very simple story and going, it's kind of boring. Why don't we add Yukon Cornelius, dog sledding adventurer, prospector into this mix? In the end, Santa learns that just because some people are different doesn't mean that you can't use them for your own personal gain. Oh, and just a special shout out to Head Elf, the funniest character in the whole thing.
Why weren't you at elf practice?
Santa Claus is Coming to Town, I remember watching a lot as a kid, but apparently, after watching it again just now, I only remember put one foot in front of the other. I forgot basically everything else. I think this movie is the origin of over-explaining where things came from. You know how... I was gonna reference Star Wars. You know how in Solo they're like, this is why Han Solo has his funny gun. Here's how he got his lucky dice. Santa Claus is Coming to Town is all of that. It is a mailman committing mail fraud by reading the letters that are not meant for him and answering the kids' questions of why does he wear a red suit? And he's like, because his family wore red suits, obviously. There's a reason for everything he does. It's all because he's anti-fascist and is trying to take down the Burgermeister regime, which is awesome. But I feel like at the end, they film their 40 minutes and they're like, oh, let's wrap it up. Yeah, it just works itself out. No resolution. He's just Santa and the Burgermeisters are gone now. It's fine. I wanted to see how Santa would fully take down a fascist regime. Also, throughout the entire movie, everybody calls this guy Mr. Warlock, and every time he says, call me Winter, please. So they just keep dead naming this guy. The Year Without a Santa Claus, like I said, I don't think I've ever seen this, and the most exposure I had to it is Ska-Tune Network's Ska Christmas album that has Heat Miser and Snow Miser on it, which tells you a lot about my music taste. And I think this one is the best one simply because it has a plot. It has a plot, and it doesn't quite half-ass it at the end. Santa's feeling uninspired and under the weather, so Mrs. Claus sends out some elves to try and drum up some Christmas spirit. When they're out there, Vixen gets captured, and in order to save the day, to get that Christmas spirit, to get Vixen back, they have to make it snow in the south on Christmas. So they go to Snow Miser to be like, can you make it snow? And he says, no problem, but you have to talk to Heat Miser because he's in charge of that area. And they talk to Heat Miser and he's like, no way unless I can make it spring forever in the North Pole. And they go, that's not a good deal. I'm talking to your mom. And they talk to Mother Nature and they work out an agreement. It snows, they get the reindeer back, the Christmas spirit is there, and Santa is inspired again to go be Santa. Specifically, I like how this one teaches the anyone can be Santa lesson. You can be Santa too. You can spread the same joy that Santa does. Of course, they're all just giving gifts to Santa, so, but still, it's giving. It's being Santa for Santa, and he needs that sometimes. Santa Claus is Coming to Town definitely has the best characterization of Santa, because it's basically the entire movie's about that, and it's very anti-fascism. It's awesome. The Year Without Santa has the most plot. There's a consistent plot, and I appreciate that. And Rudolph has Yukon Cornelius. Okay, I think Year Without Santa Claus is the objective best, but I think Santa Claus is Coming to Town is my favorite. Put one foot in front of the other. Just such a catchy song about walking, but it's actually about how change is a slow and purposeful action that you have to take every day. Sorry if this one was a bit all over the place. I need to get these out.